Welcome to Good Day Canton. I'm your host, Supervisor Anne-Marie Graham-Hudak, and we have a great show for you today. Today I'm joined by Anu Gopalakrishna from My Family Services, who's here to tell us about all that organization and some specifics on how they are dealing with the COVID pandemic. Thank you for being here, Anu. Can you please tell us what My Family Services is?
Thank you so much, Anne-Marie, for having me here. My Family Services is a nonprofit organization, and it is focused towards women in abuse and domestic violence situations, where we step in and we help them, we empower them, and we are with them hand in hand until they get out of that situation and they find, a value in terms of the career-based opportunities and set them free, and then they come back to volunteer with the organization. So it started in 1986, and since then it's completely volunteer driven, except for 2-3 administrative folks. And we recently even received a state grant. It's called STOP, which allows us to provide empowerment lessons and training sessions for women who are in these situations.
Where is it located?
It is located in Livonia, but we have majority of the survivors come from Canton and the suburban cities, and we have helped a lot of people who just call us because of the fact that it is we are in Livonia, but then most of it is happening virtual, especially with the counselors and with the caseworkers. We start off with that because we have confidentiality and we have all kinds of legal guidelines that we need to go through in order to help a woman in that situation. But our survivors come from all across Metro Detroit area, and I would say at least about 20% to 25% are from Canton and its suburbs.
Okay, thank you. What do you do to help somebody if they call, or how does somebody usually get a hold of your services?
So we have a hotline. We're also at maifs.org. We have a hotline number, and majority of the times it's either through word of mouth. So we have because when the woman is going through abuse, she is at home with the perpetrator, so she cannot take the phone and call. So because it's just totally, they just don't have any access to communication. So what happens is they wait for the perpetrator to move out of the house. So in a sense, they wait for the offender to move out of the house, go to work, or go someplace, and they immediately try to contact their neighbor, or sometimes they visit the library, sometimes shops, the Indian shop owners. I mean, they get there and they try to give us an indication that there's something happening in their lives. But My Family Services is a very non-judgmental organization, so we take all calls, but we insist that the call comes from the survivor herself or from the person who's going through it, only because we have a series of questionnaire that is all state regulated that we need to take. It's called the intake process, where we have a person who handles the phone call and takes down all the crucial information, and then we assign it to a caseworker who then contacts the person and sets up a time, because the person actually in the intake process, the survivor could give us times which are convenient where she could get out and call. So at that time we have a caseworker assigned to the case, and then we kind of have the caseworker take it on from then. It could be different issues, Anne-Marie. It's just the fact that some people could be like they're going through years of abuse, so they're even in they're bordering mental health. And sometimes it's even the fact that they are seeing instances where it is not just physical violence, but there's also mental, and there's also other kinds of violence that can happen that could kind of limit that person from doing what they want to do or how they want to be. So there's a different kinds of, there's a whole power cycle, a power and control cycle that we all learn as soon as we get into the organization. We have an orientation, so we learn about the entire process of how this affects a person. So we know in which state they are in owing to experience.
So then if I were a neighbor and I saw somebody that I was worried about, I couldn't call you. I would have to convince them to call you.
Yes, you would probably talk to them and first find out if that's what the case is. Up to a number of times, the Indian culture, sadly, what happens is the woman tries to protect the husband, no matter how violent or no matter how evil or how bad the person is.
Okay.
The culture is such that, because majority of the cultural, I would say it comes with the fact that they accept the situation that they are in, and they try to become superheroes where they think that their husband is going to change at one point of time. Because nobody goes into that whole scientific aspect of abuse and violence, because I don't think these women understand the whole process of, if a person violates or if a person tries to abuse you or has abused you, it's going to happen again. And they have to look at the pattern that's happening. And at a point we've seen, there are two extremes of cases that we've always got. One is where people have just noticed it and they're coming to us. And the other one is, there is a series of violation and then the neighbor notices and says, hey, you know what, this is serious, you need to really call and talk to somebody.
All right,
Yeah.
because we are starting a social worker program, a clinician program within our police department.
Wow,
And we
okay.
want to make sure that we have all the organizations at our fingertips that we can call for help. But you're still saying...
Absolutely, because we have worked with the law enforcement at Canton, we have worked with law enforcement in Farmington Hills and all the wherever there is a very high South Asian population. We have worked with law enforcement officials, and we've also provided training with regard to cultural implications. Because there are, as I mentioned, South Asians carry with them very rich culture. And at no point of time there is a compromise on giving up their culture, especially when it comes to marriage. And so there are things that we need to update the law enforcement officials, saying that, make sure that the woman, writes an FIR, or, if there is, if she really feels that don't have her, take it back, because once you take it back, then that is it. So the woman always, we've seen instances where a woman wants to file a case, but then she said, because of her family pressure, because of her in-laws' pressure, she comes back and she withdraws the case. Yeah. And then goes back into the same situation. And then we get another call. So there are instances that are there, but then we do make sure that the law enforcement officers are sensitized to the cultural implications of each of those South Asian cultures.
Oh boy, that's interesting. So if the police were to call you and say we've been called here for several times for domestic violence or just some issues, they would tell you, but you would still, I guess, would you reach out to the family then, or would you still have to wait for that call?
We still have to wait for the call, but we go by case approach, so it depends on, on the person. But we definitely want to have an intake process done with the survivor, or with the woman, or may, because it's not just women, it's men too we're currently seeing a few men as well. So we take the intake process because we need to have some documentation so that we could assign the right caseworker to that specific case. Another thing, Anne-Marie, one other things that a lot of officials don't worry about, or they oversee it, is the visas. Majority of these women are on the dependent visa. They're on H4s. So it becomes very difficult for them to move around, because all that they get is just a ticket back home, and they don't want to do that. So they want to, this is, so they come to this country with a lot of dreams. They get married, they're coming on an H4. So it kind of limits them to take a lot of decisions. And I think that's where I think the officials need to step in and do something about it, where, H4s in this kind of, in these kind of situations could, do some kind of empowerment work where they get self-sustained in terms of living their lives.
Thank you. So thank you. We will be back in 1 minute with the new.
Canton's newest neighborhood park, Copper Park, is located on the north side of Coppernick Road, east of Haggerty. Copper Park features traditional playground equipment in an unconventional space. Amenities include swings, slides, a play structure, play panels, spinning wheel, shade sail, and a bouncing grasshopper. Funded in part by a community development block grant, this half-acre plot of land was purchased to add to Canton's park system in an area of the community that has expanded and added many new young families. Be sure to stop by Copper Park to enjoy fresh air and sunlight and get to know your neighbor. Volunteering is good for your mind and body. It can advance your career, brings fun and fulfillment to your life, and most importantly, connects you to your community. More than 5,200 volunteers contributed more than 22,000 hours through Canton Leisure Services last year. Give where you live and sign up to volunteer at cantonfund.org today. Know your neighbor.
Welcome back to Canton Today, and our guest is Anu from My Family Services. So Anu, we've seen an increase in domestic violence in this community, even before COVID. With COVID, it has risen even higher. So what are your experiences with that? What do you see happening along those lines with your family services?
So the stay-at-home policy has kind of affected this segment of group where, especially when there is violence at its peak, because you have, as I mentioned, the perpetrators and offenders at home. So it becomes very difficult for the survivor or for the person who's going through abuse to actually get out and communicate to an external agency, because they're not going to have that kind of an option where they're alone or where they could just get out and do things So we have seen an increase. A lot of, in fact, we've seen people who didn't have groceries. So there are two types of it. One, we've seen an increase in terms of the cases itself. And the other side we've seen where women were struggling to get groceries because there was, people are losing jobs. So it was very difficult, even if they weren't in an H-4 visa, dependent visa. It was very difficult for us to find jobs for people who were in a good status, in a visa status as well. So it was very difficult. So we kind of did temporary accommodations. We provided legal services, pro bono services so the community stepped in basically. We have a lot of really active partnerships with lawyers, attorneys around, and a lot of them from the city of Canton, like especially MIindia.com, has been a vehicle for us to communicate our needs and receive funds or receive any kind of help and resources from the community. So I think we have used our partnerships in a very valuable way. I think when at times of crisis we know what we are missing, and so we go back to our strengths, and that's our partnerships. And I think that what's changed is that we have built stronger partnerships, and of course we have received a lot of cases and calls, but we are trying to see how best to accommodate everybody within whatever we have, because we have limited funding when it comes to, because none of these are, because like any non-profit, we're always struggling for funds. But we're doing our best, whatever we could. I think I would definitely applaud the community, the South Asian community, for having come forward, and majority of them in Canton area, in the city of Canton. So thank you so much to everybody who just stepped in and helped us.
Thank you. You also had a fundraiser recently, and
Yes.
you created a video. You want to tell us a little bit about the video?
Yeah, absolutely. It was a fun project we wanted to do because the whole morale of people were down. And so this was the International Women's Day on March 7th. So we wanted to utilize that event, and that's when I think I actually approached the city of Canton, and we have two big organizations from the city of Canton, that is MIindia.com and DIVA, which is Detroit Indian Women's Association. So both those organizations, whom I'm so fondly associated with, came together, and we had My Family Services as a beneficiary. So we wanted to, since there was a lockdown, we didn't know what to do. So we had artists, we had women artists who actually, through their paintings, reflected a story of women empowerment. And we also brought two survivors to actually narrate their stories. Real stories of what they have gone through in this community right here, and it's very shocking, and it was very I don't know, we all left with teary-eyed because we just didn't know that this kind of violence existed. Even today, when we're talking about advanced technologies, and we're out there reaching the moon, doing things in the moon, we still are going back to very primitive ways of handling relationships. So I think the video pretty much provides a painter's journey of with the different paintings, and majority of the artists again are from the city of Canton, and we kind of consolidated all the stories, and we put together along with some of the musicians from Canton as well. So it's a pretty cool video, and I think you should watch it.
I will. So let's take a look at the video right now.
because he made his pride ego bigger than our marriage. He emotionally controlled my mind by forcibly keeping me busy in cooking for parties. He intimidated and isolated me from going to friends and family. Every day I used to say myself, today is the last day. He is not gonna hit me and humiliate me again. When I caught him cheating on me and openly bringing his filthy past in our present, I was on edge of despair. And by then our relationship became more stagnant. I had never been lonely any time in my life than I was in the marriage. I was scared all the time. He was a worse husband with no mercy and full of revenge and hypocrisy.
Daughter or sister, wife or mother, whatever you may call me, I will nurture. This is in my nature. Friend or foe, dear or distant, whoever you may be, I will care to make you at home when I am there. Feast or famine, copious or cramped, whichever my state may be, I will provide. I will strive to protect you with mighty pride.
చేనులోనేని పైరు కావాలి కొలనులోనేని అలను కావాలి నింగి హరివిల్లో వంచి చూడాలి మంచు తెరలోనే నిదురపోవాలి చైత్రమాసంలో.
The video was very touching. I watched the stories, like you said. There was that one young lady who was speaking as she was painting, and that was very touching because she kept changing the picture as she told her story. And then some of the performances were also very beautiful. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So the stories were, they're all real, they're all true. The two stories that you have seen are something that has happened in the community. And all the artists, it was a challenge to bring everybody together, especially during the lockdown. But I think coming together with a common cause, with a common goal, with all of them with so much dedication and commitment to the cause itself speaks wonders for the community that we live in. And I really have to thank cities such as Canton, Farmington Hills, and everybody else out there who have worked hand in glove with us. Because I think the city of Canton especially has been very, very connected with us, with the organization, because anytime we need anything, the response is quick. And I really hope that there's something that we can do with every other, model this out with every other city as well. But I know there's still a lot of work to be done, but I think the videos are something that we've put together to tell a story so that people know that it's real, it's happening, and it's right here. And I think we need to do something about it.
How many performances do you have total in the video?
There are a whole bunch of them. We have about 3 songs where musicians from right around our city sang, and then we have 2 survivor stories, and then we have at least about 6 artists, and then we also did a short review of Detroit Indian Women's Association, and we also talked about empowerment with one of the really key entrepreneurs out there in Detroit, Fruitlands Fly entrepreneurs. So we had a mix of everything that we need with regard to telling the story out for International Women's Day.
Now I saw that it was shown on MI India. Where else did you show the video, or is it?
It was a live event on March 7th. It was on a Sunday afternoon, and we had close to about 200 to 300 people join us on live. And then we had close to about 800 or 900 people watching it right after that. So we have the recorded version. It's on YouTube, on MI India TV. And yeah, we had a lot of reception from the community saying that it's a beautiful concept. So we have a few people who have done a great job putting this whole thing together. We have some individuals like Vatsala and Mona Sashital. We're all around within this, the city and city of Canton and suburbs. So all of us are right here, living here, doing this whole thing. So it was fascinating. And we had people from India too watch it.
Okay, great. Wow. Well, let's take a minute to have a break, and we'll be right back with the new.
Volunteering is good for your mind and body. It can advance your career, brings fun and fulfillment to your life, and most importantly, connects you to your community. More than 5,200 volunteers contributed more than 22,000 hours through Canton Leisure Services last year. Give where you live and sign up to volunteer at cantonfund.org today. Know your neighbor.
Welcome back to Canton Today. We are here with Anu from My Family Services. So welcome back, Anu.
Thank you.
I want to ask you a question. So when I was watching the video, the women they seemed to be single and not have children. So what happens if a woman wants to leave, or a man, and they have children? How do you handle that?
Oh, that's a great question, Anne-Marie, because child custody is a huge challenge that we've always faced. And majority of them do have children, but again, it goes back to the age-old question of, is the woman economically independent to provide for the child? And oftentimes we have had custody battles, which has gone on for years. And oftentimes it's just rested with the man, with the male, and the woman goes into the mental health scenario where, because of the law, giving away the custody to the perpetrator, she, is worried. And sometimes the children come with her because the judges have been pretty nice, especially when they look at the story and they figure out that the woman is able to provide for the children. So we've had cases of both where the legal challenge has gone for years and years, and there are times where, it's been fair enough, but that's a struggle that we always go through. And we leave it to the lawmakers to give us the right to make the right decision for us. But we don't have any. We have good lawyers who in the community who have supported the case and who have taken it. But the legal expenses are high too. And as far as our funding is concerned, it's very minimal. So we only go with what we have. So that's the reason why I think it takes a long time for us to even get the custody battles going to a finish line. So there is a problem. There is an innate problem. That's something that we are trying to find solutions with, and hopefully we'll get to a point where we would be able to work much more closely with attorneys and figure out a policy, or figure out a solution for this.
Okay, now how would that work? So you were talking earlier about stigmas, and how would you help somebody overcome that? Like you say, they might be dependent on their perpetrator, and they don't want to be sent back home. So how does that work with the visas? And you were talking that's a little bit of an issue right now.
The age-old stigma is throwing things under the blanket, and as much as we have, I think every culture comes with its pros and cons. And as much as we have contributed a lot to the economy, and as much as the community has done so much in terms of culturally for the community, for the state of Michigan, we do have certain segments where people just put this under the blanket and then say, hey, we don't want to talk about it, because that's how the culture is, because people are very timid. Majority of them are pretty timid, and they're pretty shy, or they even have ego problems to even come out and seek help. Or the first thing is even accepting that is violence. So, so the stigma has always been there, and we have tried to eliminate or mitigate that stigma. What can people do about it is talk more about it. I think people need to start having those conversations, whether it is mental health. Because I know right now that the word that's trending is mental health and depression owing to COVID. But as much as you need conversations for that topic, you also need conversations for domestic violence and abuse. It can happen to anybody. It can happen to anybody. And I have, it's a personal journey of mine as well. And that's the reason why I'm part of this organization as well. So we need to really have more open, frank discussions. I think the state, the city, the organizations such as My Family Services need to get into a very open, engaging conversation and come up with solutions together. And we have workshops and trainings that happen where we talk about how to communicate your issues and problems. So we do those trainings and workshops all the time. We have board members and volunteers. We go out and talk if we have somebody who really, because we do get at least about, we handle about 140 cases, 140 survivors every year. So annually we have 140 survivors. So it's a small community, so you'll know 140 is pretty big. And we don't have shelter homes that cater to South Asians because, you know, when it comes to the priorities, you know, we fall down in terms of minorities as well. So, it's all mainstream organizations that have shelters. So our vision is to even create one because of the massive inflow of such, cases. But we do have workshops, trainings. We have counselors. We have volunteers. We all go out. We have a beautiful event called Chai with Mai. My Family Services, Mai is mother. So Chai is tea. So you can have tea with us. And we go to different homes and talk to a bunch of people. And we talk real cases, we talk about real conditions, we talk about how it's very important for us to converse and have a conversation.
Do you work with First Step? Because First Step is also a large organization.
Yes, absolutely. I think they're all active partners, Haven, First Step, Turning Point. We work with them, and they provide us with shelters. And but unfortunately, again, it's going back to the cultural food aspect of it, because they don't serve, we don't eat, if you look at it, we don't eat lettuce and things like that as vegetarian, because even vegetarians have to have that kind of, you know, spicy food and things like that. So we want to cater to, so that's the reason why we do temporary accommodations in apartments or in motels or hotels. And we make sure that we supply food from the Indian restaurants sometimes. And sometimes we just give them the groceries and they can cook. So because the food that is served in different shelter homes in different places doesn't have that real norm of vegetarian, which is different in our culture.
Okay. Now what about with COVID? So you said how have you had to change things up a little bit more with helping these people? We had to, as I mentioned earlier, I think it's just coming together as a community. We had to, because a lot of funding was catered towards COVID relief, Meals for Heroes, and all the different other activities that were going on with regard to getting PPE and things like that. So we had some funding difficulties, but the state of Michigan was very nice. They gave us a grant to work with, and we were able to sustain at that time. And we also did special events such as the IWD, the International Women's Day. And we tried to get some funds from the community. Little will take us to some point. So we tried to do all of that, and we had a lot of really good donors who came forward and who helped us. Oh, that's wonderful.
Yes.
So if somebody wanted to get a hold of you, where would they call?
They could call 888-664-8624. That is our hotline. It's a free hotline. Or they can also visit us at www.maifs.org. maifs.org. Again, the number is 888-664-8624.
Well, thank you very much. And we'll make your video and this information on our broadcast also.
Thank you so much. I appreciate all the work and all the help that you have provided. And I really want to thank you and your team as well, Anne-Marie, for being very, very considerate and for being very gracious. And thank you so much.
Thank you. This is very important work, and it's very important to our community and surrounding communities right now. So thank you for all you do also.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for joining us at Canton today with Anu and My Family Services. Again, the information will be on the screen if you need help or you know someone who needs help. Have a good day. Thanks.